A couple years ago, I made a video with the thumbnail titled "The Next Big Three?" And on the thumbnail were pictured Sinner, Alcaraz, and Rune. And over the last couple of years, this thumbnail looks kind of ridiculous, but I stand behind this thumbnail because I believe that Rune has the potential to be at the level that Sinner and Alcaraz are at. Obviously, he's not at that level. But in today's match, in the Barcelona Final against Alcaraz, he showed what he's capable of. His versatility is comparable to Alcaraz, with the exception of the drop shot. Of course, Carlos Alcaraz has maybe the best forehand drop shot in the history of tennis. And I'm not saying that Rune has necessarily a poor drop shot, but it's not quite at the level of Alcaraz. But the rest of his game, he's got a huge serve. He's got a great kick serve on his second. He has a humongous forehand. In my opinion, the backhand looks a little bit cleaner than Alcaraz's, but based on data, Alcaraz hits a better backhand. We're going to get into that later, why the Rune strokes are rated lower than Sinner and Alcaraz. There's a reason for that. But just technically speaking, the backhand of Rune looks cleaner to me than the backhand of Alcaraz. So the ground strokes are absolutely phenomenal. Now, Rune is also an incredible athlete. He covers the court so well. He can play offense from defensive positions very similar to Sinner and Alcaraz. And over the last 2 years, after I uploaded that video, Rune showed some inconsistencies in his play. And in my opinion, it all comes down to his mental game. And more specifically, it's his shot selection. And in today's final in Barcelona against Alcaraz, I only saw one poor shot selection error. And that was early in the first set when he attempted to hit a drop shot where he was not only behind the baseline but also outside of the doubles alley. So over the last 2 years, there has been matches where Rune has shown some poor shot selection and basically beat himself in a lot of these matches. I reported on his first round loss at the US Open. I reported on his shocking final loss in Indian Wells to Draper. But what I saw today was one of the best matches that I've ever seen from Rune. And for that reason, if he continues to develop and clean up his game and become more solid, he's going to be a threat to Sinner and Alcaraz. And I do believe that we're going to eventually get a ranking where the top 3 of the ATP rankings are going to consist of those 3 guys. Now, I told you 1,000 times, maybe even more, that I'm a huge Rafa fan. And now that Rafa is gone, I'm an Alcaraz fan. So I was rooting for him in this final. And he started very strong. And I was so sure that he was going to win, just based on recent history. I had that final of Rune in mind where he played Draper. And I thought that if he doesn't come with his top game, he's going to lose in straight sets. And it looked like that very early on. But after Carlos Alcaraz went up a break, 3-2 in the first, Rune cleaned up his game and wasn't missing anything, playing aggressive from the baseline, moving the ball around. And somewhat similar to the final in Monte Carlo where Alcaraz beat Musetti, all of a sudden it was Alcaraz who maybe started pressing a little too much and gave some errors to Rune. So Rune got the break back, and now we're locked in a battle. You can see that both guys were playing well, and this was going to be a really tough match. Now, at 5-4 Rune, Alcaraz serving, it was 15-40. Alcaraz saved that first set point after a long rally. And on the second set point, Alcaraz hit a great serve. And he had a very easy ball. And I thought that he was going to blast a forehand. And he decided to hit a drop shot. And that's one of those shots where, as a fan, your heart stops. And you're wondering whether that ball is going to make it over. But again, the Alcaraz forehand drop shot is so unbelievable. It goes so close to the net and he barely misses it. So he ends up saving that second set point. And they eventually get into a tiebreak where Rune gives Alcaraz a double fault. And I thought, okay, now Alcaraz is going to start rolling in this tiebreak. But no, Rune was so solid, so tough in this match. Even when he gave Alcaraz a loose error at 3-all, he continued to play so tough. Was playing incredible defense, was also mixing up his shots, not only playing the ball hard and low, but also putting some height over the net, especially with his backhand. And now he found himself up 7-6, set point, Alcaraz serving. And Alcaraz hits a big serve, but not placed that great. I talked about Alcaraz's serve placement in one of my earlier videos. I feel like Alcaraz has to utilize the slice serve more. He goes flat often, and if that thing is not placed well, it's going to be right in the strike zone of the opponent. So this is exactly what happened at the set point. Alcaraz hit that serve hard, flat, right into the racket of Rune, who absolutely blasted the return. And Alcaraz tried to defend that ball, but ended up missing it into the net. And Rune won the first at 7-6. And I knew that it was going to be very difficult for Alcaraz to win this match. But I didn't lose hope because Alcaraz came out very positive early in that second set. But then down 2-1, he took an injury timeout. And once he came back on the court, he wasn't the same player. He lost his serve at 2-all by hitting a lot of forehands into the net. And on break point, he sprayed one long. So when Alcaraz is at his worst, like he was in that particular game, or even in some patches during the first set, it is often the forehand that lets him down rather than the backhand. And it's somewhat mysterious because at some moments he tends to spray just a tad long, and at other moments he dumps it into the net. And I saw him mimicking the forehand swing path at 5-all in the first set. So he knows that he has to put more height on it, but I think Carlos loves to blast that ball low. Now, it's not necessarily flat. He has a tremendous amount of spin on the forehand, but the trajectory is low. And I unfortunately think that that's Carlos's preference. So when he's playing well, no problem. He's going to blast forehand winners. But when he's not playing well, the forehand side will produce more errors compared to the backhand side. Now, why the ball sometimes goes long, that's possibly due to steering when he gets a little bit tight and the ball just flies on him. Carlos admitted that he's battling nerves in a lot of these matches. For example, in the match against Draper and Indian Wells, he was dealing with a lot of nerves prior to the match that persisted deep into the match. So Rune ends up breaking the Alcaraz serve. He's again playing so solid, not making any shot selection errors. He's playing very consistent, and not only that, but he's also playing very aggressive. And it's also clear that after Carlos Alcaraz came back from the injury timeout, he didn't look like his normal self. For example, he got caught in transition a lot in the half court. Carlos Alcaraz loves coming to the net, but in the second set, he got a lot of balls right at his shoelaces, and he simply wasn't quick enough to make it up all the way to the net. So there's possibly an injury that Carlos Alcaraz sustained. Now, one of the best points of the match came at 4-2 Rune in the second set and 15-40 on the Alcaraz serve. Alcaraz was hitting these incredible angles with his forehand. And that point just shows you how good of an athlete Rune is and how incredible his defensive skills are. He hit many forehand passing shots on the run in this match, but that particular one in the second set, 15-40, 4-2, he hit a ball close to the lines umpire chair for a winner cross court. Now he's up 5-2 double break, and I was sure that the match was over. And it was. Rune served it out easy and won the second set 6-2. So still a positive week for Carlos Alcaraz. Even without the possible injury, I still think it would have been difficult for him to win this match just because Rune was playing so well today. But as a Rafa fan, I want Alcaraz to do as well as Rafa did back in the day. But it just goes to show you that what Rafa was doing on clay will possibly never be repeated. The fact that he was going through all these tournaments, Monte Carlo, Barcelona, Madrid wasn't his favorite one, but he won that one too. Hamburg back in the day. Then, of course, Rome. Then the French Open. He was rampaging through that clay court season. And to expect that Alcaraz was going to do the same is too high of an expectation. So I still think positive 2 weeks for Alcaraz. And hopefully he didn't injure himself too bad. And he's going to be able to play at his best in Madrid. And for Rune, he finds himself in the top 10. He's number 9 now. Like I said in yesterday's video, very similar to Zverev. I feel that Rune's favorite surface is clay. He won the Munich tournament twice. He's going to have chances to win all the big tournaments on clay if he performs at the level that he performed this week. Of course, if Rune shows up playing like he did in the final of Indian Wells, he's going to have problems. So if Rune can access this level of tennis more consistently, I do think that he's going to find himself in the top 3 of the ATP rankings. Now let's transition to tournaments in Germany, and simultaneously we have Stuttgart, the Porsche Open, and Munich, the BMW Open in Germany. And interestingly, these are the 2 only tournaments that give a car to the winner. And that's just a glimpse into what was once the greatest tennis nation in the world back in the 90s. There was no better country in the world to play tennis than Germany. That's not the case anymore. The interest in tennis has dropped off in Germany significantly. But these tournaments that are still taking place have a big tradition, and I'm glad they kept up the tradition of giving a car away to the winner. I think that's so awesome. And another thing that I'm super happy about is the fact that Hamburg has been moved prior to the French Open. See, my least favorite tournament, and this is going to be somewhat controversial, is Madrid. I wish that that tournament would have remained an indoor Masters tournament. I never really liked the blue clay, and I always preferred the Hamburg tournament over the Madrid tournament. Just something about the Hamburg tournament, the tradition of it, maybe the fact that I grew up in Germany. I was sad to see the Hamburg tournament be downgraded from a Masters 1000 to an ATP 500. So it's awesome to see that now Hamburg is taking place prior to the French Open. Before, it was taking place after the French Open. Originally, the Masters 1000 was taking place prior to the French Open as well. So that's good news for Germany, but it's not only that. Zverev won the Munich tournament on home soil. And like I said yesterday, I had a feeling that this was going to happen. I think part of the reason why Zverev performed so poorly after the Australian Open is the fact that he had a real shot to be ranked number 1 in the world, and he felt the pressure. Another reason why he performed so poorly is that the final loss against Sinner at the Australian Open stuck in his mind, and it affected him really badly. A possible third reason could be that he went down to South America and played those clay court tournaments. He said that that might have been too much. He should have probably rested and trained instead of play those tournaments in which he didn't perform that well. The good news for Zverev is that now he doesn't have a shot at number 1 anymore, so he can play freely, and I think maybe that's what happened this week. In the final against Shelton, this was one of the best matches that I've seen from Zverev all year. He played a very clean match, was serving extremely well, not making a lot of mistakes. And this was a very tough match for Ben Shelton, who I have tremendous respect for. And let me tell you why. A lot of Americans will skip the first 2 or 3 tournaments of the clay court season because players that are not from Europe are going to have to spend a lot of time in Europe. They have to go through the clay court season, then through the grass. So it's a lot of time away from home, and that can be tough. In 2023, Shelton started the clay court season in Estoril. That's a tournament that's scraped from the calendar, but it was taking place prior to Monte Carlo. Now, in 23, Shelton barely won any matches on clay. Now, in 24, he didn't do that. He played Houston, which is on red clay, which he won. And then the next tournament was Madrid. That's the classic thing that American players do. They will show up to the clay court season in Madrid. Of course, not all of them. There were 5 Americans in Monte Carlo, and that was good to see. And this year, again, Shelton got to the clay early, played Monte Carlo, lost in the first round, but played doubles and made the semis. And I think having all those matches in doubles gave him a little better feel for the tournament in Munich, and he got out of a super tricky first round against Borna Goyo. I talked about that in a video from last week. And every match that he played, he started playing a little bit better. I think Shelton is a good clay court player, but in the final against Zverev, as I said yesterday, I didn't think there was going to be much of a chance for Shelton, even though he has incredible weapons. The clay takes away some of his weapons and exposes some of his weaknesses. So if you watch this match today, you saw that Zverev was in control of most of the baseline rallies. So when Shelton was serving big, he got some points off his serve. He tried to come to the net. That worked a few times here and there, but off the ground, it was advantage Zverev because Zverev likes to have a little bit more room on his ground strokes. He likes to stand further behind the baseline, and that's something that you can do on clay more than on hard court. Zverev was able to find the Shelton backhand, even though Ben tried to run around it as much as possible, even Rafa style in some of the rallies. But there was just not much that Ben can do from the baseline because he simply doesn't have the patience yet. Now, they played once last year in Cincinnati, and it was an absolute battle. Zverev won that 7-5 in the third. But on clay, you can see a little bit more of a discrepancy in level. So this was a very straightforward win for Zverev, 2-4, and I think it could have been even easier for Zverev. He had some looks to get the second break in the second set. So I think now looking ahead for Zverev, it's going to be a tricky clay court season for him, but I do think he's going to start going deep in these next tournaments. Now, the Stuttgart tournament is not over yet. The final is taking place tomorrow. I watched Ostapenko against Alexandrova. She played another phenomenal match. Sabalenka beat Paolini. So tomorrow is going to be an absolute ball basher fest. Two of the most aggressive players on tour. I find Ostapenko's ground strokes so interesting. There are a lot of things to learn from her forehand and her backhand, and I'm going to dedicate a video to the Ostapenko forehand and backhand. As I was watching Rune against Alcaraz, I had 3 screens running, and on one of my side screens, I was captivated by a match. I kept watching that match because it was so interesting. And it was the final between Svitolina and Danilovic in Rouen. And the first set was somewhat easy for Svitolina, and the second set got so complicated. And my feeling was that Svitolina got a little bit tight because she hasn't won a WTA title in a couple of years. She was a former number 3 player in the world. And Danilovic is a Serbian player, an up-and-comer. She has one of the cleanest service motions that I've ever seen, very reminiscent to Petra Kvitova. Danilovic is a lefty as well. And she was fighting so hard in that second set, saving so many match points. This match went deep into the second set tiebreak, and Svitolina did end up winning it. But super entertaining match, and overall a great week of tennis. Now, in the following week, we get a few days off because Madrid doesn't get rocking until the end of next week. It's a 2-week Masters. So I want to let you know that I got a great match coming on the Intuitive Tennis YouTube channel, and it's the Emma versus Recreational Male Players series, and she played a 5-0, and this match was very interesting. I'm going to put this up on Intuitive Tennis Premium by tonight, so subscribe to Intuitive Tennis Premium if you haven't. Also subscribe to the Intuitive Tennis YouTube channel, and I'm going to post this match maybe around Wednesday or so. I'm going to see how that Ostapenko Sabalenka match turns out. Maybe I'll make a video on Ostapenko and release it tomorrow or the day after. So I will see you guys in the next video.